Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to This Week in America and the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network, website thisweekinamerica.us. Great to have you with us. We want to talk in this segment today about all the problems that cities are having. As households, we have problems dealing with the economy. Cities have big problems dealing with the economy. Karen Goldner is a member of City Council in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Basically, the top 100 cities in the country drive the economic impact across the entire United States. I think accounts for about 3/4 of the economic impact for the country. Her job is to make sure things are running in one of America's top 100 cities. Fort Wayne is around number 70, number 71. A member of City Council, we're going to talk about some of the issues. First of all, Karen, welcome back to This Week in America. Great to have you with us.
It's great to be here.
How do you juggle revenue, especially revenue that you're not quite sure what you're going to get because projections are all coming in lower than what you thought they were going to, actual money coming in lower than projections? How difficult is it to try to juggle maintaining a city when you're not real sure of the projections for revenue?
Well, it's difficult, and for some cities more difficult than others. It kind of depends on how diversified your revenue sources are. To generalize, cities rely on basically three sources of revenue: sales tax, income tax, and property tax. In Indiana, we don't have a local sales tax, so it's property tax and income tax. And often, usually, even if one of those revenue sources is down, another one is up. But I just actually learned recently that for the first time in history, I guess, since anybody's been paying attention, in Indiana, in the quarter that just ended June 30th, all of those sources of revenue were down. All of them. Even in, after 9/11, sales tax revenue continued to go up a little bit. So cities, even if they've got diversified income streams, face very serious issues. And they're, as you kind of compare at the beginning, very similar to those kinds of choices that households face. And so the real estate market in some parts of the country has just taken such a nosedive that their property tax collections are significantly down. So it's not the exact same story in every city across America, but the general impact is the same, which is that cities are facing less money.
Well, and so many states are suffering. I know as they were trying to work this budget stalemate out in California, it was like, let's cut and let's rely more on the cities to provide these services. Sounds wonderful. The state's able maybe to get things back to a reasonably balanced budget. The problem then, the city has to go, wow, on top of everything else, we have to provide these services that were at least partially funded before by the state.
Well, or the state's not funding them. I mean, the dirty little secret of state budgets is cities in the United States are almost always creatures of the state. In other words, the state authorizes the existence of a city, and so the state governs what those cities can do, particularly with respect to revenue. States often are the agent for collecting taxes and then distributing them. In Indiana, that's true with the income tax, for instance. What they did in California was the state basically said, well, we won't pay the cities any revenue, or as much as they used to. And if you think about that in terms of your own household, if I just decide to stop paying the mortgage, my checking account could look pretty good. All of a sudden I'm balanced. That doesn't really mean that the bank is going to go along with that idea. So that's one of the things that when you're at the kind of bottom of the government food chain, which is cities and counties are, you are often subject to the whims of legislators who are making very difficult choices themselves, absolutely, but have the opportunity to kind of stick it to the local government and solve some of their problems by making problems for us at the local level.
You're listening to This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network, website thisweekinamerica.us. Karen Goldner is with us, a member of Fort Wayne City Council. Fort Wayne, 71 in terms of size in the United States. As I mentioned in the beginning, the top 100 cities really drive most of the revenue around the country. And we're talking about some of the problems, not only in the Midwest, but problems that a lot of cities have all across the country. A couple minutes left in this segment. With less funding, you now have to juggle police and fire. Those are the two things that I think most cities say these factors are really important. And I'm reading New York, they're trying to juggle the entire city with a fraction of the police department they had like 10 years ago. How difficult is it to provide those basic services? And I'll throw in there is, the infrastructure, the street department, because that's incredibly important as well. How do you juggle all of that with less money?
Well, that's the challenge. And, the way I look at it is kind of on an economic basis. And if you look at how do you increase productivity, it's doing more with fewer labor man hours. I mean, that's what's happened in industry over the last 25 years. And we in local government, and frankly state government and federal government, need to do the same thing. And so that's
Have those
the challenge.
entities been slow in reacting to
Well,
that?
they have been, and I would say that there's a number of reasons that's the case. I would say that we in Fort Wayne started doing that about 9 years ago. We had a mayor who was elected who came from the business sector and was very involved in Lean Six Sigma and a lot of the things that were very popular back a few years ago, but really instituted that as part of the culture in the city of Fort Wayne. And as a result, we have a relatively lean structure going into this recession, which on the one hand positions us pretty well in terms of cash balance, on the other hand leaves us fewer places to cut. But you've got services that are very labor intensive. There's a lot of ways you can use, for instance, the police force more efficiently. We use data to determine where we need to have our officers. But at a certain point, as a citizen, I want to see a cop on the street.
Yes, and what's interesting is when you hear all of these things, follow City Council, because these are the people that provide the police protection, the fire protection, take care of the potholes. Very interesting to follow what's happening with City Council, whatever city you live in. Unfortunately, out of time, we'll have Karen back to talk about more of these issues that impact all of us on a daily basis. Karen Goldner, a member of the Fort Wayne City Council, one of America's top 100 cities. You're listening to This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network.